So here is the Depth Horror all primed and zenitholed. Now, I want to do something a little bit silly with these. At least it's going to be silly because I've never done it before. But I want this to look, or at least have the same patterns as, a mackerel. Because I thought that would be fun. It'll give me some opportunities to try some different techniques out with the airbrush as well. And what I'm thinking is that we'll try and incorporate some of this for this sort of pearlescent shifting colour which fish have on their scales. So hopefully this will look really nice. Turbo Dork very kindly sent me these out to try. I'm thinking, I think we're going to have to do some underpainting perhaps. So maybe a sort of darker blue from underneath. The belly is going to be a sort of creamy white-ish off-white colour. Something like a bone colour maybe, or maybe even deck tan. We are going to use Ethermatic Blue over the whole miniature to start with. We'll see how that looks. You can see where the zenithal really helps with this because of the transparency of the contrast paint. You can preserve all the shadows and everything, which we will go back and reinforce later on. But for now, it's just slowly layering up that nice bluey green. I think that's a pretty good starting point. So we're going to clean the brush. We're going to go add some shadows in, reinforce those from underneath, do a sort of reverse zenithal spray. I'm going to be using a different airbrush. I'll be using the Galeri Mobius 0.3 for that, just because it gives me a little bit more control and I can be a bit more precise with the sprays. So because this is skin at the end of the day, albeit scaly skin, I'm going to use this Achelian green not only from below, which would highlight or rather reinforce the natural shadows, but I'm also going to be using it on top of the model as well across the back, because I feel that this would have a natural mottling. So the Achelian green is going to layer over that first base layer of the lighter paint and give it a little bit more depth, and that's down to the transparency of the contrast paint. For the stomach, we're going to use deck tan thinned down with some airbrush thinner. This is going to be 3 parts thinner to 1 part paint, and we're going to spray the belly and the tops of the legs. Once we've done that, we're going to go in with a slightly lighter colour. We're going to use AK Ivory and just highlight that belly a little bit more. So this is what we're left with. So far, so good. Now it's time for the main colour. I'm going to call it the main colour. This is that Turbo Dork 3D Glasses Colour Shift. That's a metallic paint, so it should give the sort of upper scales that pearlescent quality that fish have. It takes a lot of layers. I did speak to Greg at Turbo Dork, who advised that this should really be painted over a black base coat. But with a few coats of this, I think I did maybe 6 passes, maybe even 8. Once the layers have built up, it gives that shine while keeping the initial colour underneath. And now we're going to finish off doing the base layers. So we're going to break out the wet palette. And this is Pro Acryl Dark Jade. This is the Vince Ventrella Signature Series. Load up the brush and make sure that it's nice and sharp. And then we're going to do some edge highlighting across the spines all across the model. I am so sorry, but that the light from my magnifying glasses is so bright in this footage. It's going to be like that for the next 10 minutes or so, and I completely understand if it ruins the experience for you because it doesn't really show you a good view of the model. But I did realise upon looking at the footage, and I have rectified it towards the end of the video. So yeah, sorry. So on to Volupus Pink Contrast. This is a really nice deep pink, almost purpley colour. I'm using a big synthetic brush and I'm just going to paint this over the entirety of the inside of the mouth, the teeth, the tongue, the lips, the gums, everything. The reason I'm not bothered about painting over any of the other bits is because this is going to be the innermost colour and all the subsequent layers are going to be put over the top. So there we go, nice and gummy. So moving on, we're going to start with the metallics. We're going to use lead belcher, but any medium to dark silver will do the job here because we are going to be brightening it up later. So he has a chain wrapped around him which leads to an anchor on his back. And although the sword looks like it would be metallic, it's actually a sort of bone sword, so we'll be painting that a bit later on in a different colour. One thing I have found when I was painting this model is that the details on it are simultaneously really, really nice and really, really confusing. So as you can see, there's what I now realise is a fin that is flattened down next to the anchor. Yeah, it took me a little while to work that out. So next up we're moving on to Dark Sea Blue, another AK 3rd gen paint. So in between the teeth on this model, he actually has his tongue sticking out, or sticking up, which I had to sort of double check on the artwork of the box. So we're just going to base coat it using that colour. Another example of really nice details. Then we're using Intense Pink, again, AK. We're going to just reinforce the highlights on the gums. And I'm focusing on the points of the gums where the teeth would be pressing against them, because the skin would be thinner there, so they would be lighter. And once we've done that layer, we will be reinforcing that with Old Rose, which is a nice fleshy pink. Specular highlights for this one, nothing too big because again it just needs to show the highlighted areas where the light would hit. It sells the effect because less is more. Now we're going to use Deck Tan to paint in the base layer of the teeth. The sculpts of these teeth are very, very sharp and pronounced, so it's quite an easy step. Going back to our dark jade, I'm going to be painting the first highlight on the tongue. I do realise I'm jumping around a bit between body parts, but that's what happens. And then again, we're going to use some of the dark jade in with that Deck Tan just to do a spot highlight on the tongue. And while we have the deck tan on our palette, we will base coat the sword. Next up is Hydra Turquoise from the War Paints 2.0 range from the Army Painter, and I'm just going to use that to further push the highlights on the spines across the model and also around the face, such as here on the lip. Then back to the teeth. We're going to shade this down with Skeleton Horde. I like using a contrast paint as a shade. It's a bit runnier, depending on the brand of course, but for teeth, which have a lot of different colours and patterns, this is definitely the one to use in my opinion. And I'll also use it on the sword blade here, especially around the more shaded areas where the hand meets the blade, and also any other details. Now this is going to be out of some people's comfort zone, but I'm going to do an oil wash now. This is Absalom 502 oils, again from AK Interactive, and I've chosen Payne's Grey for this because it is a dark blue grey, which will serve to act as a further shade down, not only for the skin but also for the metallics. So what I like to do is I put a little bit of oil paint in one well with some white spirit, and the well next to it, as you just saw, also has white spirit in it, and that will be used for cleaning my brush afterwards. So as you can see, I'm mixing this to a wash consistency, a very runny, thin wash consistency. The good thing about using oils is the drying time. It is going to take a very long time to dry, which means that you have more time to work it around the model. So I'm just going to slap this on, not too heavily. I don't want it running everywhere on the model. I'm being selectively general, I suppose, with this. I want it on the entire model apart from the eyes around the teeth. Because we spent time painting the teeth a bone colour, I don't want it to then be shaded blue. And we'll go over the metallics and everything else as well. As I've said, one of the good things about using an oil wash is the working time, so I can go back around the model and make sure that there's no huge spots as I go, such as under the arm there. It tends to collect in places with a lot of ridges. After around an hour of drying time, I will go back in with a cotton bud or an eyeshadow applicator sponge and just remove the excess from the top of the model. I didn't get any footage of that, but here is the result. I'm just going to shade down the metallics with Strong Tone from the Army Painter. All of these additional washes are just to create more contrast. Because the model is a majority blue, I want to really differentiate the details, especially adjoining materials such as the anchor and the skin, or the gums to the teeth, for example. So contrast is king. And just to draw the contrast across the belly even further, I'm using the Army Painter Dark Blue Wash as a sort of pin wash. So I'm being very, very selective and only putting this into the deepest creases across the lighter parts of the belly and the legs. So Ancient Stone we will be using to highlight the sword and we'll also be using it across the teeth a bit later on. I'm first doing quite a heavy dry brush just to catch all of the details on the sword blade. Again, because it's bone, we're going to be using a lot of texture, and now I'm just putting in some scratchy textures with a sharp brush, mixing a little bit of the deck tan in for some added variety. This is the final highlight on the teeth. I'm using this probably on the upper half of each tooth just to give it that nice shining look. You're going to be looking at the face of this model more than the feet, for example, so we can spend a little more time doing it. We'll also use the ancient stone on the lure on his face, and then we will be painting the eyes in with striking scorpion green. Really nice contrast colour, very, very bright. You don't need a lot of it, and it really does pack a punch. And another wash for the bone areas, this time being very selective and just putting it into the deepest recesses on the blade. It doesn't look like it's doing an awful lot, but it does give that extra depth, so it's worth spending 5 minutes to do it. Adding tonal variety is very important on large flat areas because it stops them looking boring. Now we're using one of my favourite paints, Black Uniform Base. We're going to use this for the nails on the miniature, the nails as in the nails on his hands and feet, his claws. I suppose the Citadel equivalent of this would be Corvus Black. It's a sort of smoky grey black. So now that the striking scorpion green has dried, we're going to mix in a little bit of that contrast paint in with some of the ancient stone that we have on our palette to create this really bright neon colour. And we're just going to go over the eyes again with that just to give it an ethereal gleam. Now for the lure, we're going to use a fluorescent ink from AK Interactive. This is fluoro green, and these are great. So not going to need a lot of this. A little goes a long way, but I would suggest using a larger brush than you think you need and really loading it up and then just tapping it so that you get a lot of that pigment deposited on the area that you want. So now it's time to try and do the mackerel pattern, and I decided to go with Black Uniform Base again for this because it's not a stark black, it's quite a smoky black, so it would give me a bit more leeway when trying to get these patterns right. I'm using this as a reference picture. And as you can see, there's a lot of circular shapes on one part of the pattern, which then sort of go down into stripes or spikes. So that's what I'm trying to emulate here. Very difficult to film, given the stance of the model, but it looks okay. Trying to get under the arms is the tricky part here. And then I'm going to use snakebite leather to do some vertical sort of dots and dashes going down through those blacker stripes, just to give again a little bit more tonal variation, a little bit more texture, and trying to make it look like a mackerel, the death mackerel. So we're going to mix some dark grey into the black uniform to highlight the claws, and then we're going to go with basalt grey for a second highlight. And that will be all that we do for the claws. Now to highlight the metallics, I'm using Vallejo Model Air Chrome, which is by far one of the best metallic paints, one of the best bright metallics I've ever used. And you really don't need a lot of this stuff. You can use it through the airbrush, but I'm going to use it with a tatty old brush. And I'm just going to lightly scratch parts of the metallics to give that shine. As you can see, it's very bright, so you don't need a lot. And now we're going to go back to Aethematic Blue. So because we've done the pattern, the mackerel pattern on the side, I want to then have another very thinned layer of the original base colour, just to go over the top of that and blend it in with the skin. Now using a mix of old rose and ancient stone to create a very pale, fleshy colour, I'm going to paint in between the spines on the fins. This will just give a bit of colour to the model that isn't blue, and it'll remind us visually that this is a real creature. This is an alive, living, breathing thing. So to shade down towards the inner parts of the fins, I'll be using Magos Purple from Citadel. This is a very sort of thin paint naturally, so as you can see, it just sort of washes in, and then we can sort of wet blend it out if there's too much of a stark line. And I use this technique of washing and then feathering out across the fins, across the model. So all the way up the back, across the top of the head, and down onto the tail. We're nearing the home stretch now, so we're on to effects. Green Stuff World Rust Liquid Pigment is a really nice orangey rusty colour, very fresh rust colour. So I'm just going to be popping that on the metallics, especially around the deeper recesses, to sort of simulate rust and where it would naturally gather. And now that that's done, the only real thing left to do is to varnish it. And I'm using AK Ultra Matte. And once that's all done, you're left with this. Thanks to Mantic Games for sending me the Trident Realm Battalion box to paint up for the Kings of War Slow Grow Army Challenge. For more videos like this, like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for notifications. Thank you.